What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Diablo 4 video. Now, if you've followed the channel for a long time, you'll know that this is the game for which I started making videos when it first came out. And honestly, it was a disappointment, an absolute disappointment of a game at the time. That being said, it's now been a year and a half later, or 5 months, give or take. And there's been its first expansion that came out, there's seasons available, and there's a ton of new content that's now available in the game, to the point where this actually now feels like a game. And in this video, I'm not really going to critique the game too much, but I am going to go over some of the changes that have been made to the game, the stuff that you can do now, everything they've added, everything they've kind of taken away and or changed, so that it's better and somewhat more enjoyable game to actually play than it ever was before. And the first thing I'm going to start with is obviously the story. Now, if you're somebody that doesn't care about the story of the game or the lore itself, that's okay. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Obviously, with the expansion, The Vessel of Hatred, that we just got a little over a week ago now, there's been an addition to the story. So if you played the original game, there's a story where in the end you had to go and fight and chase after Lilith. I'm not going to go into spoilers, obviously, but basically now there's a follow-up story to that. And if you're somebody that's come from Diablo 2, there's going to be a few really nice Easter eggs within the storyline that just came out that you might actually really appreciate. I know I did. I am a huge Diablo 2 fan. I love the lore of Diablo as a whole. So that was really nice. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the changes they did to the leveling. Now, leveling used to be where you had to go all the way to level 100, and after level 50, instead of getting skill points, you would start getting Paragon points, and you'd get 4 every level, plus the additional ones. Now, the changes to that are you now go to level 60, and you will get 60 skill points to put into the original tree. And then after you hit level 60, you start getting the Paragon points. Now, I believe I haven't made a second character on this, so I haven't fully confirmed, but I'm 99% sure the Paragon points are shared, because they do take a while. And I'm currently Paragon 200. I believe the max is 300 plus the additional Paragon points that you're able to get from like Lilith statues and other stuff like that. And same old concept, you have the Borgs. However, the glyphs are now leveled through something else called the pit, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But it's made the game a lot more it's easier to level now. It's easier to go through the difficulties, which have also received a significant change. So now there's no longer the 4 difficulties where you had to do a capstone dungeon. That's completely gone. Like the one that was here to get into what it was even called, Torment 3, something like that. That's no longer here. The one to get into World Tier 4 is no longer here either. However, now you can basically start the base game on any of the first 4 difficulties. So you got normal, hard, expert, and penitent. And once you finish the story, I believe you need level 60. You have to clear a certain level of the pit, which again we'll get to in a little bit. And then you can access Torment 1. From there, if there's another tier of the pit that you have to clear for Torment 2, 3, and 4. And Torment 4 is, I don't want to say it's hard, but it's one of those places where your gear needs to be pretty well optimized in order for you to be able to do the content. And the drawback is as you can see here, each torment you go up, you get more like experience, it's increased chance of drops. But Torment 1, your armor gets reduced by 250, cap is now 1000, and resistances by 25%, cap which is 70. Go to Torment 2, that doubles. You go to Torment 3, it's an additional. You go to Torment 4, your armor is reduced by 1000, and your resistance is by 100%. So you end up having to stack a lot more, both armor and resistances in order for you to progress through the game. I personally, I like these level changes. I think it's made the game a lot better, a lot smoother in terms of both the leveling process, the difficulty going up, and I actually had fun this time getting to max level and like grinding through the paragons and pushing my gear. Speaking of which, the next thing I want to talk about too is crafting. So before crafting, all you could really do was go here, and you could either enchant an item, or you could, change the affixes. And changing the affixes is still the same. The cost has been significantly reduced, so it's no longer those crazy, outrageous costs. However, the change to imprinting aspects is really cool. So any item that you put in here, whenever you disenchant an item at the blacksmith, it will save that tier into your Codex of Power. So for example, for the accelerating aspect, I got to the 16th tier out of 21 tiers possible. So as you can see, it goes between 10 and 30%. And I can put 25% on any item which this is available for of my choosing. Same with everything else, like I've gotten various tiers. This one is max, so the ones that are covered in the gold border, these are the ones that are maxed. So as you can see, there's 16 tiers for this. I can always put the absolute max tier of this aspect on any of my legendaries. And another thing they've added is the tempering and the masterwork. So if you now go to the blacksmith and you go put here an item to temper, when you click on these, you get to pick some stuff, and it'll get you one of the things. So each item that's an ancestral legendary, I don't remember if the normal ones can have two. Actually, no, the normal ones can have two. They changed that up as well. But basically, you can put up to 2 aspects of your choosing, and you have a chance of doing that. And you have a limited amount of tries to get the one you want. I believe it's 6 tries per item, which as of this expansion, there's now something called a Scroll of Restoration, which restores the charges of an item, basically bringing it to 12. But as you can see, it's only usable once per item. So once you have done that, you can no longer use it. Now, once your item is tampered, you can masterwork those items. So what that does is every 5 levels to each tier 4, basically it increases all stats of that items by 5%. 5%. And then if you have necessary materials, every 4 ranks, so ranks 4, 8, and 12, increases one aspect by 25%. So for example, this pair of gloves, when it was base, had +4 to quill volley. When it hit level 4, it landed on that stat, and it now got +5 to quill volley, which is pretty cool. So crafting has gotten quite a bit of an expansion. Not that it's anywhere where it needs to be per se, but it's significantly better than what it was at the launch of the game. And then hand in hand with that goes the gems, obviously, and the addition of runes. So runes got added into Diablo 4, and no, they're not the same rune words from Diablo 2, which I know is very disappointing for a lot of people. It's a bit disappointing for myself as well. That being said, I don't hate necessarily the way they got implemented into the game. So unlike Diablo 2, where you used to put like runes depending on the number of sockets and a white item, and then you get the super crazy powerful rune word, they're maybe not as powerful. But you can put them into uniques and legendaries, and you can only put 2. And there's 2 types of runes now. There's the runes of ritual, which as you can see, depending on what you do, you gain a little bit of offering. So for this, for example, the POC rune, POC rune, however you want to call it, every time you spend 5% of your maximum resource, you get 5 offering. And then you have the runes of invocation. So here's a rune of invocation. So once you get to 100 offering, basically after you spend all your resources at one time, you get this reduce your cooldowns by 0.1 seconds, right? And there's other stuff too, like this will invoke, requires 500 offering, which is a lot more, but you would invoke the druid's petrify skill, stunning all enemies around you. So if you have a crowd control build, this would greatly help your crowd control build. And you can only put 2 of these sets within the item. And then the other thing you can do is obviously put the gems. So once you have 2 sets, you don't want to put a third one, it will not work. But you can put the gems, and you can craft them at the blacksmith. They now go to a grand tier. They will cost a lot more. And if you do make the previous tier, so for example, let's say you had enough to make a chipped. Once you make a chipped, and then you have enough to make a diamond. So for example, let's take this emerald. I made a royal emerald, right? It cost me 10,000 fragments of an emerald and 1,000,000 gold. But then I wanted to make grand emerald at some point. So which costs 10 times as much, both gold and resources, and forgotten souls as well. But if I wanted to make this, and let's say I had 90,000 fragments, I could go and where is it? Salvage the gems, and I would get my 10,000 emerald fragments back. And then I can make the next tier up. Obviously, the gold won't get refunded, but the fragments will. Neither will the forgotten souls. So it's a nice change to the gem system. I personally like it a lot more. I think they did a pretty good job with that. Before, it was kind of tedious and annoying, and I didn't really like it. Now, one thing everybody was asking for at the launch of this game was endgame bosses. And these have obviously been added more so over time, but we do have some endgame bosses. And I believe we have one. There's 2, 3, 4. These are kind of the 4 smaller endgame bosses, which will give you materials for the bigger endgame bosses, which are here, Duriel, and I believe I forget where Andariel is, but she's somewhere on the map. So there's basically 6 total endgame bosses. There we go, Hangman's Fault. There's Andariel. So Duriel and Andariel. 2 of these bosses will give you mats for Duriel. 2 of these bosses will give you mats for Andariel. Those obviously have greater drops. And of course, there's still the Lilith endgame Uber boss, which is still an annoying fight, mainly because not everything's telegraphed that well. That being said, and plus there's stages, so she's a lot more annoying to fight. However, she is free, so if you do want to spam her as a boss, you don't have to farm materials, but you do have to deal with the animations and the fact that you can't fully one-shot her as she has multiple stages, and then stuff she has to do before she can fully die. That's not the case for, I believe, most of the other bosses. I haven't done too much of Andariel, to be fair, but I'm pretty sure the other 5 you can straight up one-shot. And Dariel, I think, has one mechanic that prevents her from being one-shot. I can't really remember. Duriel's usually the go-to for farming, at least people's preference normally. And then another thing they've changed is the Nightmare Dungeons. So Nightmare Dungeons used to be this kind of tedious, kind of annoying thing where it would go from 1 to 100, which now is no longer the case. So that doesn't exist anymore. There's no more tiers for Nightmare Dungeons. Basically, you now have a key, and it turns that dungeon into a Nightmare Dungeon. And that Nightmare Dungeon will scale to your level. So if you are level 50, you can do Nightmare Dungeons in level 1 now also. If you're level 1, you can do it at level 1, and it'll be scaled to level 1. If you do it at level 60, it'll be scaled to level 60. And you can do it that. It also scales with the torment difficulty that you are in, which obviously it should. And you no longer upgrade your sigils with them. You do it with pit. But Nightmare Dungeons are basically just now a material farm. You go in there, you do the dungeon. It's not that hard anymore. There's nothing crazy about it. It's alright XP, and you can get some materials out of it. And sometimes it'll help towards the seasonal journey completion. I believe in this season you collect like Zakarumite fragments. So killing monsters in Nightmare Dungeons, I believe, gives you some of that, or it's the boss at the end. They're a little bit of an obsolete content, but you know, they're still there, and they've been reworked to a point where they're a lot better. Unfortunately, the older Nightmare Dungeons still have all this mechanics where it's like grab the stone, bring the stone to the pedestal, proceed to the next thing. Newer Nightmare Dungeons, or at least the few I've done within the Vessel of Hatred expansion map, are a bit less tedious. You just kind of go in, kill everything, kill the boss, you're done in the dungeon. That's it. No tedious aspects. And I understand they're probably not going to go in and rework like every single aspect. You know, that'd be kind of annoying. But it's all good. Now, the pit. This is one of the biggest changes to the game since its launch. So, what you need to do is you have to go to Karagar, which I apparently can't. I don't know if that's a glitch. Or not. I don't know why I can't do that in this area. That's really weird. It's probably one of the weirdest glitches I've seen. There we go. So, if you go to Karagar, once this loading screen's done, the pit is basically if you are a Diablo 3 player, and you remember the Greater Rift, and how they worked, is you basically go in here, you can start your tier of the pit. There's obviously the tiers that get you into specific torments. So Torment 1, you need to clear 20, Torment 2 a 35, Torment 3 a 50, and Torment 4 a 65. And you basically open it, you have 15 minutes. Every time you die, it adds 30 seconds to your timer to kill the boss. And at the end, after you've killed the boss, you can now upgrade your Paragon Glyphs. If you don't die at all, you get 4 upgrades, straight up upgrades. If you die once or more, I believe you only get 3 upgrades. And of course, the closer the level of the gem is to your tier of the pit, the less likely you are to succeed. Exactly the same as Diablo 3 Greater Rift. It's a straight up copy at this point. But, you know, it's a good system, and that's probably what you're going to be pushing once you're min-maxed, once you're in Torment 4, and you have nothing else to really do, is you're going to be pushing that pit as high as possible. Which is not a bad thing at all. I enjoyed Greater Rifts. They obviously get kind of boring after a while of doing them, but it's something to do, and it's a good endgame activity for the game. Next change is to the Hell Tides. Now, this wasn't really a major change. What they really did is, now if you go into a certain area of the Hell Tide, you're going to be able to see all the chests. So, before, you couldn't really see the chests on your map, and you couldn't see the special chests. Now you can. It's no longer a thing. You can see where they are, so mystery chest is here. This one's a weaponry. It won't tell you what kind of weaponry. Sometimes two-handed, sometimes one-handed. Same with the jewelry. Could be rings, could be amulets. And of course, same with the armor. Could be helmet, chest, gloves, or legs. You won't know until you go to the chest. And the other thing they've added is you now get these fragments, and if you have 3 of them, excuse me, you can go and fight the boss, which there should be 1 of in every region. I think it takes a little bit of time. No, there we go. So the Blood Maiden. So once you go to the Blood Maiden spot, there's 3 altars. You put in 3 fragments, spawn the Blood Maiden. It's this like big boss that everybody can fight. The more people there are, the harder she is. And then you get to get a lot of loot off of her. And a lot of fragments here that you can go and trade for a chest. So what people do, as long as you put 1 fragment in, I believe you get bonus loot. There's 3 different people will put in a fragment, and then, for example, if 3 people have 15 fragments, you can do her 15 times, and then you have a shit ton of health shards. And you go and open like all the chests. And it's decent experience as well. Plus you get like Hellborn hunting you. There's a lot more like mini bosses and random stuff that happens throughout the Helltide. And the biggest change that they made to it that I really like is before there used to be this wait time that you had to have for an hour between the Helltide. So it'd be like 1 hour off, 1 hour on. So if you wanted to do Helltide all the time, you couldn't. Now you can. Well, not all the time, because as you saw, I wasn't there earlier. What basically happens is the Helltide now runs for 55 minutes, then it's off for 5, and then it's on for another 55 minutes every single hour. So you no longer have to wait that 1 hour to do the Helltides. Now, the Vessel of Hatred expansion also brought a few more things. So, one of the things that they brought is the Undercity. So, if you go into the new area in Nahantu, I believe it's pronounced, at the main city, you can access the Undercity. So you go here, come all the way down to where this Brazier is. Brazier, yeah. Thought I had the wrong word there for a second. And it's the Undercity. So this is basically the reversal of the pit. What that means is there's a timer of 120 seconds, not always. We'll get that in a sec. That counts down. Now, the more stuff you kill, the more that timer goes up. And you can also change this with tributes and bargains. So, for example, let's put this tribute. So, this is one of the craziest tributes. You have the magic tributes, rare, legendary, and the unique ones. And these bring down time for a lot. So, for example, for this tribute, if I were to start it with this, my starting time is now 45 seconds. And then I get a time bonus penalty, I get less potions, and it becomes a lot harder. So you need a really fast, clear build to be able to push this to the end. Because if you run out of time before you get to the boss and kill the boss, you don't get anything. So it's a harsh bargain. Also, you can pay for stuff to do. So you can also pay to increase skill ranks, core stats, basically ways to get stuff for yeah, you can get chaotic uniques, you can get more resources, whatever you really want. You just have to pay this little fine. So like for this is the most expensive one. It's at least 1 passive rank. So any amulets you get come with that, but you have to pay 50 million gold, right? So whatever reward you choose. And then, like I said, you have to absolutely finish within the time, otherwise you will not get anything, and that sucks. The other thing that they've added is the Dark Citadel. So this is Diablo 4's first raid. And you do actually need 2 people for this. It's one thing I don't really like about it is that you need a party. So it's 2 to 4 people. There's 3 wings, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. I don't know if you have to do them in order. I believe once you do this one, the other 2 unlock, and you can do them in whichever order you want. And you can do it every week for a cash, and you can do it for more than that in order to trade for cosmetics. Where's here? So she gives you some scrolls. You can get restoration scrolls with the coins. You can get some cosmetics, which are pretty expensive, but you know they're there if you want to farm this out. You can do it more than once a week. Do as much as you want. You can get those coins, and you can get all those cosmetics. Now, the reason you need 2 to 4 people is because there's mechanics inside the dungeon where it's mostly where you open certain doors, and a couple of the boss mechanics where you just need multiple people, where one person stands on one pad and another person can pass through, stand on that pad, and then you go through a different door, etc. Stuff like that. But it's a good raid. It's hard. Stuff hits hard in there. You need to be like well prepared, well geared in order to do it, especially on Torment 4. And it's fun. It's actually very, very fun. Despite me not liking the fact that you need multiple people to do it, it's a very enjoyable raid. It's actually probably one of my favorite contents to do. I just haven't done much of it because I'm focusing on other stuff and I'm trying to min-max my gear. We now also have the addition of mercenaries, and there's a few more in the game. I haven't gotten all of them, but I've gotten 2. And unlike every other Diablo before this, you can have 2 mercenaries, and they do different things. So I have my active mercenary, which you have to level up, and you get to put skill points in and all that. And then they also get a report, so they give you some rewards, and then once you max it out, every time they hit the cap, you get a little bit more coins, which if you go to the mercenary hideout, you're able to exchange for certain things, like gear, materials, etc. And then you also have a second mercenary. Now, what she does, she's your reinforcement mercenary. So basically, they have a certain amount of skills, and you can switch them up. She can be your main, this guy can be your second, the other one's whatever you want. They all do different things, so it's up to you to choose what you want them to do. But what the second mercenary does is every time you use a certain skill, she will come and use a skill. So for me, every time I use Scourge, I want her to come down and knock everybody down for 3 seconds. Whenever I do this, she comes and does her skill, and obviously she has a cooldown on it, so my cooldown's less, but every like 2 or 3 uses of this skill, she'll come and knock everybody down. I like it. I find it very helpful. And again, she also gets report, she also gets all the rewards, and again, when she's maxed out, you can get more coins from her every time she gets the maximum report. And then you go and trade these all of then. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is Uber Uniques and trade. So Uber Uniques have been changed to where they're a lot easier to get now. If you go to the blacksmith, where is it? You can now craft a cache, or if you go to the gem guy, so the cache gives you a random one. You go here, you can craft specific ones if you have the right runes. And you can also get them, obviously the runes are hard to get, so it's not super easy, and you need a certain amount in order to be able to do it. They're not all that useful, just because the regular uniques tend to give certain class. Some builds will use the Uber uniques, some can't. And the tempering on the legendary affixes have made them sometimes better than the Uber uniques, so they don't see all that much use. That being said, if you get one with multiple greater affixes, they're worth a lot. So you can trade those, you can sell those, buy your whole build after if you really want, which makes it pretty nice. And the other thing I want to talk about is the open trade. So now trade is more or less fully open. What I mean by this is, unless you've altered an item, in any way, shape, or form. I still think it should be fully open, so whatever you do to that item, it should still be tradable. But I'm not going to get into that here because this isn't a critiquing the game kind of video. But unless you do that, you can trade anything in the game. Any mythic unique, any regular unique, any legendary. So unless you change one of the affixes, so this is no longer tradable, it's now bound to me. Or if I put another aspect on it, or temper it, it doesn't let me trade it. But prior to that, you can trade any item, regardless of its stats, regardless of what it has on it. Trade it for gold, trade it for runes if you wish, depending on what you're looking for. Fortunately, runes don't have the same value as they did in Diablo 2, because you can remove them and put them in a different item. But yeah, those are basically all the changes that have happened to the game since its launch. I think it's made the game a lot better. Like, for me, when this game launched officially, it was a 2 out of 10 at best, and I'm being very nice, just because there was nothing to do. There was a complete lack of content. There was glitches everywhere. Nothing worked the way it was intended. Things were either too overpowered or too underpowered. There's no sense of balance. And since then, it's come a significantly long way, to the point where I would put it at about a 7 out of 10 now. It's been a lot more enjoyable. I've had a lot of fun grinding my way through this expansion. I want to keep grinding through this expansion. I want to min-max my build. I want to see how far I can push it, how far I can take the pit, as well as do all the other content on the side. Like, I have several boss materials that I want to go through, that I want to do, like runs. I want to do videos for you guys, more so based on this game, because I now actually enjoy playing it, as opposed to before, where I didn't. Anyways, that is going to be it for today's video, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. If you found this helpful, if this made you want to come back to the game, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more Diablo 4 content. Sorry. That came out completely wrong. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.